Welcome. How's everybody doing? Yeah, that's what I like to hear. It's good stuff. My name is Dorian Burton. I'm a third-year EDLD student. Yeah! And it's really, really good to be back at Hugsy. I want to take the time to thank Dean Ryan and the HCA Hugsy faculty and community for allowing me the opportunity to introduce Jeff Canada. Jeff is a lot of things to a lot of people. Most notably, he is one of our most distinguished alum. He's the president and founder of the Harlem Children's Zone. But to me, as a former employee, he's one of my personal heroes. And he serves in that role to a lot of different people. I was recently in a meeting with a senior administrator at a school district, and she had a picture not of her husband or of her kids, but she had a picture of Jeff. And she said that it served as her inspiration. And if you're wondering why Jeff is an inspiration to so many people, all you have to do is go to Harlem, where he has mapped off 100 square blocks and serves over 18,000 residents, helping to make a difference in that community. All you actually really have to do is go ask any kid walking down 125th Street where they're going to go to college. I guarantee you they have a plan and they have an answer. Jeff is successful because he's authentic and he doesn't believe in fighting just a good fight. He believes in winning. There's a big distinction there. As a young, ambitious employee of Jeff, I can remember sitting down in his office, and I don't know if he remembers this, and I said, you know, how can I work with you? You know, how can I work directly with you? Jeff has a lot of swag, so he kind of just leaned back and he chuckled. And he said, you don't need to worry about working with me. You need to be worried about doing good work and making a difference. And that's a lesson that I've taken to work with me every day. I recently was able to start our own organization called Tandem Ed with another HGSE third-year EDLD student named Brian Barnes. And we're focused on working with African-American communities around building a unified vision. And we work on the principles that I actually really learned with Jeff. One, you go to work, you do great work, and you work with a sense of urgency every day that our kids deserve. Two, you treat every child like they're your own. And the third one, you do whatever it takes every day to ensure that our kids have every opportunity to be great. If you guys could please stand to your feet and join me in welcoming Jeff Canada.
Wow. Thank you, thank you. Wow, that was terrific. Hi, everybody. So, I hope you guys like me. A lot of places I go, I'm a little concerned. People kind of think of me as sort of this radical, and I have been absolutely thrilled to be back here. This is literally the scene of the crime for me. I mean, it really is. So I was explaining to the dean, when I got here, I didn't have any money. I had a wife and 2 kids. And I came right out of undergraduate school, right from Bowdoin, I came to the ed school. And I had to find a job and a place to live, but I had no money. That's kind of hard. The job and a place to live. So I took a job as a superintendent in Somerville, Mass. And I was a superintendent, and I had to convince them that I was not a Harvard student. I didn't have to work too hard on that. This is 1975. There weren't a lot of Harvard students looking like me. They really thought I was a superintendent. So that worked out okay. But the thing that happened to me here changed my life forever. Dean, there is no chance in the world that I do any of the things I did at the Harlem Children's Zone if I did not really launch my professional career here at the Ed School. So, I mean, my first impressions are something. I had sort of seen the business school, I sort of looked at the law school, and then I came down Appian Way. And I was like, where is the Ed School? Right? So, I mean, I know we're in a fundraising mode here, but we gotta do something because this is half the problem in our business, right? It's really shocking to me. The future of America is really based on what educators are going to do with our young people over the course of the next 20 years. And that is not an exaggeration. And yet, people keep confusing this work with something that calls for a big heart and lots of love and not a lot of science and not a lot of skill. And there could not be anything further from the truth. And you know, I almost didn't end up here at the Ed School because in 1974, when I got here, when I was at Bowdoin, I was preparing to be an educator, and so I wanted to take classes that would help me in what I thought were some of the keys. So one of the classes I took was a physiology class, right, when I was at Bowdoin, because I just knew the mind, body, the whole scene. I had to understand it. The other was a pharmacology class because there was a huge heroin epidemic. It's like a lot of the drug epidemics going on, and I just thought that understanding drug interactions was going to be really important. And I was a senior up at Bowdoin. I got A's in both classes. And the head of the biology department came to me and said, Jeff, you just aced 2 of our toughest science classes. You know what that means? I said, no. He said, it means you're smart. I said, and I hear you want to be a teacher. I said, yeah, I want to be a teacher. They said, no, but you're smart. You don't have to be a teacher. I said, no, I really want to be a teacher. He said, no, Jeff, those kind of brains, you could be a doctor. I don't want to be a doctor. No, Jeff, you could be a doctor. You haven't thought this through. So for the next 3 weeks, a campaign was begun to change my mind about going in education. Head of biology, head of chemistry, they came in, and it just kept going after me. Why are you going to waste all of that intellectual firepower on education? And they kept beating me up, and I'm like 22, right? And they're just saying all of the money, the prestige. So finally I relent. I said, okay, I'll become a doctor. And I had to take an extra semester of science class because I had majored in science. And right as I was going to sign up for the extra semester, I realized, I don't want to be a doctor. I don't like sick people. Why would I do that, right? I mean, but it struck me how people think about our business. It just struck me that folk, for some reason, they don't take education serious. So I got here and I was determined. You know, the line that got the most laughs in the documentary Waiting for Superman was when I said when I graduated from this place, I felt I could have education straightened out in a couple of years. Right? And everybody laughs because it seems so naive, but I really believe that because things happened here that changed me. So here's the first thing that happened. I'm taking a class in behavior modification from a professor named Dr. Bruce Baker. And I was a psych major up at Bowdoin, and it was all learning theory, right? It was all like reinforcement schedules and Skinner and all. And I wanted the clinical stuff. I wanted Freud. I wanted id. I wanted to figure out why your relationship with your mother messed you up, right? That's what I wanted to get into that stuff. And they wouldn't do that up at Bowdoin, right? So I was really frustrated. So I took this class in behavior modification. And so I was like the only one in the whole class that was into it. And Dr. Baker was up there teaching, and I raised my hand and I said, Dr. Baker, am I wrong in thinking that if we made that reinforcement intermittent, it would actually strengthen the behavior? And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and it was like love, right? He was like, here's a guy who really cares about this stuff. And Dr. Baker went on a mission. This was before, now you have to understand 74 when I was here. In psychology, people thought Down syndrome meant that kids couldn't get an education. They just put these kids in institutions. You had any psychiatric issue, and immediately you were placed in a non-academic setting. Autism, I wouldn't even touch an autistic kid. And Dr. Baker was convinced that with proper techniques, you could teach any kid anything. And so he opened up a camp. It was called Camp Freedom. It was in Center Ossipee, New Hampshire. We were now in love with one another because I was like, I can finally use all this stuff they taught me up at Bowdoin. And to get into Camp Freedom, it was 7-week sleepaway camp. We took the kids who were the most educationally handicapped in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and you had to actually audition to get into the camp. And so you have to imagine you have a kid that has never been able to go to school, has never been able, no one will keep your kid because the kid is acting out all the time, and we're offering 7 weeks away. The parents were desperate to get their kids in. And any kid who could get through that interview successfully automatically was out, right? When I said he wanted the most difficult kids, the kid who was there and the mom was like, no, Larry is really a good kid, and he starts pulling her hair, and she's trying to act like it don't hurt. No, Larry, he usually doesn't do this, and then he takes the water and throws it on the floor, and she's trying to pat it up like, Larry, behave. We're thinking, there's our boy right there. You're getting it. So this is something that has stayed with me, and if anyone on my team, you ask anybody on my staff, Jeff's deal is you can save every single kid, and if you don't know what to do, ask him because he'll do it. Now this drives my staff crazy. They sit there and say, yeah, you know if you go to him, he's going to say, well, you want me to do it? Because he thinks he can do everything. But this is where I got it from. Dr. Baker said, there is an answer for every kid. And if you don't have the answer, it is not the kid's fault. It is because you are not skilled enough, and at that point, you call me, right? Now I'm thinking, really? Now we've got some really difficult kids here. And I was good with most of the kids. There was one kid, I just couldn't get this kid to respond. The kid had never been to class, had never sat still, had never paid. We couldn't get the kid to even look at us. This kid was, to me, completely shut down. And I tried every technique I knew, and none of it would work. And finally, I said, Dr. Baker, I know you said there's an answer for every kid, but you haven't met Monroe. And he said, no, Jeff, we can figure out what that. I said, no, I did it. All the stuff, I went through the whole thing. He said, okay, let me go in. And this is what he said. So there's a bunch of us, Harvard sort of, we were all finishing up our work. We were eager. He said, you all watch. I was like, ooh. It's going to be embarrassing for him. Everybody's going to see him mess up, right? Took all of 2 minutes. Took all of 2 minutes. And I sat there, and I said, you mean there are people really that good? There are people so good, with so much skill, that even for folk who think we're good, we're not even close. So I did my summer in Center Ossipee, New Hampshire. I worked with the most disadvantaged kids who had never, ever been inside a classroom. And when their parents came up 7 weeks later to look at their kids inside those classrooms, every parent started to cry because they never dreamed that an education was possible for their kid. Now, that's what happened to me here. Then I went from here into a regular traditional school, and I saw kids who were within every normal range we would ever think of, and teachers saying they couldn't educate them. And I said, how could that be true? How could that be true when I know if you are good, you can educate even kids who have severe disabilities? And how can you tell me you can't educate this kid? And why is it we have these huge numbers of kids in this country still don't learn how to read, still don't learn how to write, still can't do math, and now, right, I'm talking 38 years later. It's stunning to me. It was stunning to me when I left here that we had answers, but as a field, we weren't practicing what we had learned. It is still stunning to me to this day. Now, it wasn't just Dr. Baker that changed my life. There was another professor here whose name, actually, I ended up calling him my father. We became very close. His name was John Schlein. He ran the consulting and psychology department up here. And he started a school because he believed, it was almost antithetical to Bruce Baker, he believed that you could reach every single kid if you spent the time getting to know them, getting to be empathetic, getting to understand this kid, right? Then you could figure out how to get that kid from a place where they were stuck to a place where they could be successful. And he was just one of the most marvelous clinicians I have ever met. And I ended up running the school for him. I spent years, and all of us had to take supervision with him, which meant we all had to be analyzed. Now, for most of you, that might not be a problem. I'm a Bronx guy. I don't do analysis really well. You know, that whole tell me what's on your mind, what's bothering you, I got it, right? That's my thing. I got it, I'm good. He was too good for me. So we would all go and we know I have to do supervision. I say, I don't care what. I am not going to end up crying in this session with John Schlein today. I am not. I said, why? He said, Jeff, he's not going to get me. Why? So I go in there, see John. He was this sort of wonderful figure. Anyone who knows him, he had this silver white hair. He was elegant. He spoke and wrote just magnificently. And he'd be like, he'd look at these piercing eyes. He'd look at, Jeff, how are you? I said, I'm good. I try not to look at him. Right? He said, no, really, how are you? I said, no, I'm good. I mean, I'm feeling pretty good. He said, Jeff, are you really good? John, my life is terrible. I can't help it. You know, John and Carl Rogers and some others helped create client-centered therapy. If you look at our model, you will see running through it the threads of these brilliant, brilliant educators. The compassion, the science, the hard edge of we're going to save every single child. That all happened here. That all happened for me here. So yeah, some people, they know I'm like a hard testing data. Yes, that's true. I used to see the data. We were doing behaviorism. You needed the data. You couldn't think it was working. You had to see evidence that it was working, yes. But this other side, the clinical side, this understanding young people, the reaching out to them, the connection, the making sure that young people understood that you knew where they were and you could actually help them get from where they were to this new place. That was also part of what I learned at this wonderful institution. So you fast forward now, decades later, and I am still struck with the fact that people try to deny that there's science to the work that we do. And I spend a lot of my time fighting people over the fact that, yeah, data matters. Of course it matters. Yes, we should be staying on top of our game. Yes, we should. I tell folks, you know, education is one of the only professions I know where you don't need patent attorneys, right? You can't give away a good idea, right? People here and I didn't. Nobody wants to steal a great idea from someone else, right? In every other business, you're protecting your intellectual property. Oh, I don't want to, I'll sue you. Not in education. You have folks out here brilliant. They're out there trying to, please listen to me, please, I have an answer. Oh God, read the paper. 8 people read the paper, what the heck? It's crazy. It's crazy, I mean, but I'm being serious. It's part of what frustrates me is that there is real science, there is real knowledge. Getting it from the theoretical to the practical is a reason I always loved this institution. Right? This wasn't just about writing a thesis in public. It was about, put your money where your mouth is, actually get in the tough places and demonstrate why you're so brilliant. As I tell folks, we come up with great plans, right? Things fall apart in the real world. We need institutions that are going to constantly push this edge. How is it that we really do high order thinking and writing and publishing, but at the same time, we are constantly counterbalancing that with real practice in the tough places in this country. Here's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this. It's clear to me that, we have no plan B now. I know Secretary Duncan was here. He is a good friend and I think a wonderful educator. Even if you're Secretary of Education, you're limited in what you can do. My belief is that we've got to step our game up because what we've decided to do as a nation, when we don't educate these kids, and there are these schools they call dropout factories, but that really doesn't give an indication of what we're talking about. We have entire communities where kids haven't gotten an education in decades. Entire communities. I tell folk, I'm 62. I went to school in the South Bronx, elementary school, 57 years ago. So 57 years ago, the South Bronx had one of the worst school systems in New York City, worst school systems in New York State. 57 years later, the South Bronx has one of the worst school systems in New York City, worst school systems in New York State. And you know something about a lousy school system? It's not like a bottle of wine where you're like, 89 was a good year, right? I mean, it is lousy every single year. Now, I just ask you to think about this. I'm not talking over those 57 years, 10,000 kids. I'm not talking about 20,000 kids, 50,000, 100,000, 200. Try millions. Millions of kids who have not gotten an education over 57 years. If you go in those schools, they start at the same time, they end at the same time, they're taught exactly the same way, even though the data shows us it hasn't worked for 57 years. See, to me, something's wrong with that. How could we allow that to go on when the only chance these kids have? They have no trust funds. There's no one going to come in and help them with some investment. This is the only chance they have to make a good life is to get an education. And then people want to react when you try to do something different. So I tell folks, education, change in public policy is a full contact sport. It is not for the faint of heart. So anyone wants to get in this business, if you want people to like you, don't come into this business. Go sell stocks and bonds or something, make some people some money. Because if you try to do something, the system is determined to stop you, right? It's just determined. So you go and you try and change something. There are people who are furious with me today, just furious, because I said, you know what? We need to change the model. So you try and do something to do a charter school. Oh my God, you're doing charter schools? People get mad. Things failed 57 years. Couldn't we try a little something? No, look what you're doing, right? It's like, what is this, right? The critics always say, well, some of those charter schools are lousy. Only in education is this an argument, right? some of them are lousy. So let me get this straight. Because some of them are lousy, we should get rid of all of them. I was like, look, I tell folks, imagine if technology worked like that, that sometimes things didn't work. I'm not like a real techie guy, but my staff had decided, they kept giving me stuff, and every time they would give me to use something, it would end up 6 months later being obsolete, right? They say, oh, learn Multimate. Yeah, that lasted for about 6 weeks, and I had to learn a new system. So finally they said, Jeff, we got the answer. I said, if you get this, we promise this is the only device you'll ever have to get. I said, you promise? They said, yes. Get it and learn it. So I bought the Palm Pilot. Some of you are laughing. Some of you bought one too, huh? Right. But did we say because it's not working, we're going to stop? Can you imagine what business does that? And only in education, right, is the fact that some things, there are a lot of lousy charter schools, they ought to be closed. That's true. That's not a reason to stop the innovation, to stop moving forward. I think that in our business, we're going to have to admit a couple of things. One, we don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. Every day I'm just trying to figure out what can we do to help this group of kids that aren't doing well. It's not like we've solved this thing, right? But this is what I do know. We have to stop acting like doing what didn't work for 30 or 40 or 50 years is a reasonable solution to what's happening in poor communities. It is simply not. And I will tell you this, some of this is going to call for adults to do some things differently. People, I think they beat up on me the most because I talk about firing lousy teachers. I didn't say we should hate them. I didn't say we should beat their dogs. I didn't even say we should get rid of the mediocre ones. I just said the lousy ones, we should fire them. So my oldest son's a lawyer. He calls me one day. He says, oh, Dad, all my friends are mad with you. I said, why? Because it said on the internet, you said we should send all the lousy teachers to the upper middle class communities. I did say that. I did. I said, but that wasn't the complete quote, right? The complete quote is, if we can't get rid of them, then we should send them all to the upper class communities, right? Because you know what? They wouldn't tolerate it for a second. They wouldn't tolerate it for a second. Oh, no, it wouldn't be my problem. It'd be somebody else's problem, but there would be a solution, and I bet a lot more people would be involved in education reform if it was their kids, right? So, doing the opposite, shipping all of those lousy folks to the most fragile schools is just not a solution. And then the end result, we know what happens. We know what happens. Look, this is why the future of this country rests on solving this problem. Because we're finally starting to admit that our solution, which was to build enough jails so all those kids that we don't educate, we can make sure that they can have a cell to be in. Now that's been the plan. Now, I hate to tell you, back in the 70s, there were a lot of conspiracies I believed in. I won't start naming some of them, right? We can start back with who killed JFK, but I ain't going all back there. But this idea that there was an intentional plan to build prisons in poor communities and lock people up in them. Now look, I don't know whether it was a conspiracy of some well-coordinated. All I know is the end result is that we incarcerate more people per capita in the United States than any place on the face of the earth. Any place. If you don't believe me, you punch it in your phone, incarceration rates, you will see, number one, United States of America, 743 people per 100,000. No one's even close to us. No one's even close. You look at the UK, 147 per 100,000. You look at China, 115 per 100,000. 743 per 100,000. Guess who all those people are? Now, so folk get mad at me. They say, Jeff, okay, you run the Harlem Children's Zone. You start with kids from birth. You get them through college. Yeah, how much does that cost? I tell them, costs $5,000 per year per kid. I could make it half that if I include the adults. We serve a lot of adults. I don't want to make it half that. I want a nice solid number, $5,000. They say, Jeff, that's not scalable. I said, well, it's not scalable. No, it's not scalable. Tell folks, Every now and then I have to end up in criminal courts. I have yet to be in a criminal court where a judge is looking and saying, oh, Raheem, this is your second armed robbery. I'm going to have to give you 10 years. But the average cost in the United States is $30,000 a year. That's $300,000. You know what, Raheem? That's not scalable. Never heard it. Never heard it. And here's the ugly truth. The average cost is 30. New York State, you know what the state average cost is, incarcerated person? $60,000. 60. When I tell you what the New York City cost is, you're not going to believe me. You're not going to believe me. But punch it in your phones. Look it up. $167,000 a year. $167,000 a year. I know, seems unbelievable. How could it be? Look it up. So, there are 12,000 people in the city jails. I work with 12,000 kids, right? You think I'm gonna listen to somebody yelling about, why won't you spend $5,000 when Raheem is 9 and you wanna yell about that, but you're totally prepared to spend $167,000 when he turns 18, and what do you get for the $167,000, right? You know what I gotta produce for my $5,000? I get these kids graduate, elementary, middle, high school, to make sure they go into college. I have to get them through college. I have to make sure that they have good health services, good social services. They are good citizens. None of my kids end up in jail. That's what do you get for $167,000? You get better citizens? No. You get people who have jobs? No. What do you get? You get nothing. You get zero, and yet in some communities, we think that's an okay investment. I have a problem with that. I get a little crazy about this stuff. All right, because what I'm saying, the only answer is education. It's the only answer. There is not another answer. There is not another answer. So if we're going to save this country, and you know what, this used to be a small problem, right? People used to think, oh, it's a black-brown problem. There's two problems with that kind of thinking. Number one, it's false. When you begin to see how big this issue is and how few of our young people are actually prepared to enter the labor market and make anything like a decent wage, this is a much bigger problem than just the black and brown kids in this country. That's the first thing. Second thing, if you look at the demographic shifts in this country and the birth rates, you're going to see 25 years from now, most of the folk in this country are going to be black and brown. If we don't figure out how we solve this, how are we going to stay a great country? It just simply, it doesn't add up. And so, as far as I'm concerned, this is the most important piece of business we have in America. Everybody's talking about income inequality. We ought to talk about it. How are you going to solve it? Educate these folk who haven't received a decent education. Now, I'm going to tell you, another problem that folk have with me is that, we have one standard for educating our kids. We want our kids to go to college. That's it. And people are saying, Jeff, some folks from up here, what about technical schools? It's not realistic, it's elitist, it's all of that. Yeah, it is all of that, but still, that's the only goal we care about. I'm gonna get my kids, all my kids are going to college, that's it. People get mad. I'm gonna tell some of you may be mad too, but I'm gonna tell you what I've told people all over the country, because it's not like there's not an argument for technical schools and military. There's a great argument for that. But I always tell people, when you're in doubt about a policy, always do what rich people do. Right? Now, that's a policy. Now, I'm just saying, I know you're going to say, well, Jeff, how did you get there? I'm going to tell you how I got there, right? Because I have to raise a lot of money, right? I have to raise a lot of money every year. Every year I have to raise about $50, $60 million. So I have to raise a lot of money. I have to know a lot of rich people. I tried raising money from poor people. I'm just saying it didn't work out so good, right? So now I spend a lot of my time with rich people, and guess what I noticed? They only have one goal for all of their kids. One. I'm talking, I don't know, just 10, 20, 30. I'm talking hundreds. I've never met one yet, not one. I bet you there's not a person in this room that has any other goal for their kids. I bet you not a person in this room. And here's my belief. If you get paid to work with someone, then you should have the same expectations for those kids that you have for your own kids. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So, look, my wife and I have 3 grown kids. 2 of them went to college. 1 did. We had same expectations for every kid. Kids decide themselves. By the way, I think that's one of those universal rules. If you have 3 kids, one of them's not going to do the right thing. Don't be mad, ask your spouse, oh, what did we do wrong? It's all good, just the way things go, right? Let it go, okay? But I'm just saying, we had the same expectations. Here's the problem, and people have been arguing, we lost a big grant because I'm not supporting that kind of thing. Here's the problem when you choose another outcome. Right now, across the Harlem Children's Zone, I have a bunch of staff looking at some kids saying, I don't think that kid's college material, and Jeff expects me to get this kid in college. But this is what I learned. I've been at the same job for 31 years. Same job, same community, walking the same streets. You know what that means? You know what that means? There were kids that I started working with who are now bald. That's what that means. I've been in this a long time, right? And here's what I began to find out. There are a bunch of kids that I thought would never make it. And I see them years later, and they have made it. And they come in and say, Mr. Canada, I remember you told me if I don't go to college, and I messed up and I got in trouble, but you know what? I remember what you said, and I went back, and now I have my degree. I want you to know that I'm teaching. I'm like, really? Thinking, how did this guy get through, right? Who knew? Who knows? You don't know. You don't. Everybody who thinks they can look at a 10-year-old and determine, I know what it is, you don't know. And as soon as my staff think, oh, we're off the hook with this group of kids, they're going to start teaching them the other stuff, right? Now, so what does this mean for a community? When I started my vision for the zone, getting my kids in college, none of my kids in Harlem. Harlem was just a place. If you ended up going to college from Harlem, you might be on the front page of the Time magazine, right? Oh, this kid got out the hood, went to college. Well, you ask somebody 15 years ago, you know somebody go to college? They'd be like, I think this girl on 117th Street, I think she goes to college. You say, well, could you go? No, no one from Harlem goes to college. I can't. You have to be a genius. Today, we have over 1,000 kids in college. Now, let me tell you what it means when you end up with 1,000 kids from a community in college. Now, when my kids all come home for summer break, it looks like every kid in Harlem is from going to college. So now I ask the same 10-year-old, could you go to college? You know what they say? Shoot, she's in college. I know if she could go to college, I could go to college, right? Because it makes it a normative, right? This is just back to the norm. This makes it ordinary. Most kids want to be how their friends are. Most kids aspire to be in the norm. There are always kids going to be on each side of that bell curve. But when the norm is no one goes, you got a problem. When the norm is everybody goes, then all the stuff you say to kids, hey, you better do your homework because you know you're not going to be able to get into college with that. No, don't do that because if you get arrested, you know you're not going to be able to get to college. It starts to make sense because they know that's where they're going. I'm not going to do something that's going to take me off the path that I'm supposed to be on. So part of this is you change the norms. And it doesn't happen overnight. This thing takes time. So let me tell you a sort of closing story about our work, which is that we have to constantly think outside the box. Part of what we're trying to do is really hard, it's complicated, it's difficult. We don't have all the science. We're still working on the science. I'm sure a lot of that science is being invented right here at Hugsy. My belief is that so many educators get scared to try something because, if you try something bold, if it doesn't work, people end up writing these things about you, saying this stuff, that it's easy to sort of just kind of go along, play along the margins. But we need folk who are going to take some chances, who are going to be bold, who are going to strike out and do some things haven't been done. So whenever I think about this issue of thinking outside the box, I think about how my whole career was changed when I was at Bowdoin because one professor thought outside the box. I got to Bowdoin, pretty good school. I didn't come from a good high school. I got there, the upperclassmen said, so what's your major? I said, psychology. They said, how's your math? I said, I'm not really into math. I'm a social science kind of guy. They said, well, yeah, but you got to pass statistics. And there are a bunch of people in a different major because of statistics. So I knew I wasn't ready for statistics my freshman year. So sophomore year, you had to declare a major. I had to take it. So we had our first test come up. I studied all week, was up all night, took the exam, got the exam back a week later. I got a 37. I was devastated. Wait, this was a real 37. This thing wasn't marked on a curve. I mean, I was looking at the real McCoy here. And I just knew my academic career was over. And worse, I was humiliated and ashamed. And something said, go talk to the professor. But I was like, no, I just can't face him. And then finally I said, okay, I went to see the professor. And I said, look, I studied all week. I was up all night. I need to be a psych major. I think it's going to help me be a better educator. I just don't know what to do. He said, Jeff, calm down. He said, I know what happened to you. I said, you do? What happened? He said, it was the slant. I said, what do you mean it was the slant? He said, you're going to get this because you're a psych major. All of our textbooks are written by real people, and they have their own biases. Their biases come up in their writing. I call that the slant. This textbook we're using is written by an author with a particularly strong bias. It's working for all the other kids. It's not working for you. I want you to try a textbook written by an author with an opposite bias to see if it works. I said, he said, no, little experiment. I want you to read tonight's chapter in the old book, do the problems, see if you get it. I read the chapter, did the problems, I didn't get it. He said, I want you to read that same chapter in the new book, do the problems, see if you get it. I read the chapter, did the problem. I said, look, I understood that. He said, well, finals are coming up. We have 3 chapters left. Just to be sure, I want you to read them in the old book, do the problems, see if it clicks. Read the chapter, did the problems, didn't get it. So I want you to read those same exact chapters in the new book. Do the problems, see if you get it. Read the chapters, did the problem, actually got it. Took the exam, got an A on the exam, passed the class. It was in the next semester, I was sitting in a perception class when it suddenly hit me. I said, you know what? That didn't have anything to do with a slant. This guy got me to read 2 books, right? And I was furious, right? He took advantage of my sophomoric mind with that whole slant thing. And it wasn't until I was a teacher myself I understood the genius of this man. Here he had a kid in front of him who had tried hard but failed miserably. What do you do, right? It's one thing if I had come, I wasn't even close. And he knew that my ego couldn't take it, that I had lost my confidence. I didn't believe in myself anymore, and he had to figure out a way to get me to work twice as hard but hold that ego intact. And I've never forgotten that example. If he had done what almost any other professor would have done, oh, you got to work harder, I would have dropped psych, been a different major. Every day in our business, there are these big challenges we face. Others have said it can't be done, you could never get that done, can't be fixed. I was at a conference at Columbia, and a bunch of education researchers were there. And I gave this talk, it was about 8 years ago, that I was going to change and get all these kids to graduate. And a very famous, I will not mention the person, a lot of folk might figure out what school the person is from, a very famous education researcher got up and said, Jeff, we love you. We love you, your passion, it's great. But do you realize that's never been done? You can't go in a community and make it so kids who've never gone to college are all going to go to college. It's never been done anywhere in the world. He said, but I don't want that to be sort of disheartening to you that it can't be done. That's what he said, right? And it's funny because there are lots of things that's never been done until someone's done them, right? I mean, that's just like the whole thing. And in our business, there's a lot of work to be done. and the fear that people have of doing the big thing, the bold thing, of stepping out there, taking the risk, meeting the challenge. This wasn't like I'm going to get some of the kids. I want every single kid. I want them all. Why not go for it? That's what I think when I think of the Ed School. That's what it means to me. That's what the people I met who taught me, that's what they taught me. No, go out and really do it. And yeah, you might fall flat on your face. Or you know what? You just might succeed. And I think that if we don't have that same kind of energy, that same emphasis, that same boldness, we're going to lose our country. We need people to step up. So let me close with a poem. I like writing poetry for advocates. I was being introduced in Buffalo. I was telling the dean that I was in Buffalo hearing testimony on technology with, it was me and it was Eric Schwartz from Google and one other person, which is funny to me because I know nothing about technology, and I kept leaning over to him saying, what are they talking about? He knows a lot about technology. But in the introduction, the lieutenant governor, which was true, he told the story, which was a true story. He said, when I met Jeff, this is what happened. He went in front of his board, the mayor, the chancellor was Joel Klein at that time, in his community, and he said, if he doesn't outperform the other public schools in Harlem in 5 years, he's going to fire himself, and that's exactly what I said. And then I got my entire staff there, and I said, guys, I am going to fire myself in 5 years, but you all know I'm the last one leaving, all right? So part of this is about real accountability, right? It's about there got to be a penalty. You know, failure, none of us, you got to be prepared to risk, right? Failure. I don't get, this is sort of a compete. You've got to be prepared to take big bets and risk failure, but you can't sort of let failure become the norm and you just get comfortable with it and think it's okay. Not when kids' lives are at stake. So this poem I want to close with, it's a poem I wrote. It's called Don't Blame Me. The girl's mother said, don't blame me. Her father left when she was 3. I know she don't know her ABCs, her 1, 2, 3s, but I am poor and work hard, you see. You know the story. It's don't blame me. The teacher shook her head and said, don't blame me. I know it's sad. He's 10, but if the truth be told, he reads like he was 6 years old. And math, don't ask. It's sad, you see. Wish I could do more, but it's after 3. Blame the mom, blame society, blame the system, just don't blame me. The judge was angry, his expression cold. He scowled and said, son, you've been told, break the law again and you'll do time. You've robbed with a gun. Have you lost your mind? The young man opened his mouth to beg. Save your breath, he heard instead. Your daddy left when you were 2. Your mama didn't take care of you. Your school prepared you for this fall. Can't read, can't write, can't spell at all. But you did the crime for all to see. You're going to jail, son. Don't blame me. If there is a heaven or a person supreme, a final reckoning for the kind and the mean, and judgment is rendered on who passed the buck, who blamed the victim, or who proudly stood up, you'll say to the world, while I couldn't save all, I did not let these children fall. By the thousands, I helped all I could see. No excuses. I took full responsibility. no matter if they were black or white, were cursed, ignored, were wrong or right, were shunned, prejudged, were short or tall, I did my best to save them all. Then I will bear witness for eternity that you can state proudly, don't blame me. Thank you very much.